Well, hello everybody. I am Pete LePage. I'm a developer advocate on the Chrome team, and today I'm joined by Paul Kinlan in our London office. And
Hi, guys.
Hey, Paul, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Good.
Excellent.
Had yesterday off. Now I'm back on work. Oh, it's exciting times.
Very nice. So today we want to talk about one of the new Chrome apps APIs, the System Info API. The System Info API lets you access information about the system, and things like the number of CPUs, the CPU usage, memory, hard drive storage space. There's a couple of new ones coming that we'll talk a little bit about, including display settings and things like that. These are experimental APIs. So right now they're under the experimental namespace. So as you're playing with them, keep in mind that they may change. In fact, Paul, you had mentioned the display one. I hadn't found that earlier, but you found it, right?
Yeah, so I was searching through the docs site that we've got where I was looking for, because we don't necessarily always link to the latest trunk at the moment from the documentation. So I was looking through the search, and the search turned up display settings, and I was like, that's not linked from anywhere.
Yeah.
So it's like so early on. It's kind of exciting. So yeah, we're finding more APIs as they come along as well.
Yeah, so the documentation link is up there on the screen, so you can go have a look at the couple of things that are documented right now. There are two pieces that are definitely there documented. There's a third one that we'll talk about in our demo today that's not documented, and I'll explain a little bit about that one. But let's jump in and have a quick look at the demo. If we could bring my screen up, I'm going to bring up this little app that I wrote earlier today. And we'll link to the source code here in a little bit, but for now I'll just show you a couple of things that are available through the System Info API. So first off, you can get information about the system architecture. So what type of CPU's in there, what the model is. So you can see on my Mac that I'm running here, I've got a Core i7 running at about 2 gigahertz with 8 processors. I was trying this earlier on a Chromebook and to make sure everything worked okay, and I got a different set of information here. So you can see what's going on within the processor. I also can get the CPU usage. So I know how much of my CPU is being used. Right now, computer's not really doing a whole heck of a lot, so you can see that my numbers are nice and low here. Next piece is the memory information. Memory information, I've just got this set statically right now, but it's showing me that the available memory that I've got on my computer, the maximum capacity, and how much is left, how much is not being used. So you can see I've got about 8 gigs of memory in this computer, but I'm using about, 5.5, I think, so I've got about 2.5 left. And then finally, the third one is the storage capacity. And this goes off and lists the number of hard drives that you have available, the total capacity of the hard drive, and the available space. So those are the three pieces, and then as Paul mentioned, there's also the display capabilities. The display capabilities I didn't get in here because we're pretty sure it just landed. We can have a look here in a minute and see if it's in Chromium or whether it's just in or where it is. But let's take a look at the code and see how this is all working. So I'm going to bring up this sample, and if we could, you can see on the screen right now, there's a link to a GitHub repository. This is a little app that I wrote, or the link to the repository that I wrote earlier this morning. You can also go get the one out of the Chrome Apps sample directory. That one, the code on it. Paul, you described it well. It's maybe not the best sample code to use, because sample code really should be written reasonably well and follow best practices. And this maybe.
Yeah, we need to get that one fixed.
Yeah.
I'll take full responsibility in the fact that I actually merged that one in.
All right.
Because we had basically this actual System Info API has been worked on by some of the guys at Intel.
Okay.
And basically it landed, and we didn't have any samples for it, so I went to ask them to do samples. And I was in a bit of a rush, and I checked it. It looked okay.
Yep.
It worked. And then we came back to it today to say, right, we're going to show developers best practices. Let's see let's show them something really cool. And we it needs a little bit of work. It's actually a great sample. It's probably not the best one to show off live. So.
Yeah. So we'll take a look. Here's the code for the one that I wrote, which is up and available in my GitHub repository. But there's a couple of things in here that I'll just point out. It's just sort of standard HTML. I've got some tables in here for some of the data so that, for example, if you've got multiple hard drives, we want to be able to have multiple hard drives listed. Have a look at my main.js. So this is the place that brings up the app. Pretty standard stuff here. We're used to all of these normal things. There's one that we don't talk about a lot, and I like to toss this one in here. This is one I think is really useful to toss in, is the ID. If you put an ID into your Chrome packaged app manifest on the onLaunched call, what that does is that'll help Chrome remember where that window is. So if you close the window and reopen it, or if you resize it, it'll come back to the same place. If you don't put it in there, it's not going to reopen to the same place.
Yeah. The other cool thing to point out about that as well, it also acts as a singleton as well.
Mm-hmm.
So in theory, you can't open any more windows now. It'll just return a reference to the original window if you try and open the same window twice.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Yeah, it's only relatively recently that came in as well. So
cool.
It's kind of cool. It's kind of nice as well.
Excellent. So in the manifest is pretty much the standard manifest that we're used to looking at. But there's one thing that I added in here, and that's the experimental API permission. Because right now, like I said, this is under experimental, so we need to make sure that we are asking for experimental. That does mean you can't upload this to the Chrome Web Store. I tried to upload it earlier, thinking, let's see if I could get it up there so that you guys could download it and play with it as we're talking about it. And I was thinking, well, maybe because I'm a Googler, I can get it in. Yeah, no. And of course, my pet peeve, it doesn't tell you till you go to hit publish, and then it's like, So, in any event, you need to ask for the experimental permission. So let's go have a look at the code that we've got in here. I've just taken the system info, created a variable that I've shortened down to the chrome.experimental.systeminfo API, just so that I would save a little bit of typing and all that kind of stuff. And on my document ready, I go do a couple of things. So I call update CPU, update memory, and update storage. We'll have a look at those in a sec. And then I added a listener. So like I said, there are 3 different APIs that you can call. So system info, CPU get, will go and get the information about the CPU. Let's take a dive into that right off the bat. So I just do a console log so we can see what's going on, but I say CPU architecture is CPU.architecture name, or arc name. The model is just the model, and number of processors. And that's basically all we need, all that we get back when we ask for the get for the system info, or for the CPU info API. So we get 3 parameters back, the model, the architecture, and the number of processors. The second one is memory. And memory gives you the amount of available memory that you have on your computer and the amount of total memory. So if we go and have a look at update memory, so system info, memory.get, and again, like most Chrome packaged apps APIs, it uses a callback, so update memory info. So if we go to update memory info, sure enough, here it is. We've got a couple of things in here that I'll point out. So again, I just do that console log because I always like to see when I'm debugging things what's going on. I say math.round, memory.capacity, which is the total capacity of my memory, divided by 1024 by 1024 so I can get it in megabytes because it gives you the information back in bytes. And then I just tack on some megabyte. And again, same thing here for the second line, memory.available capacity gives me the available capacity, the amount of memory left. So if we go and pop over to, here we go, let's bring this guy up. Paul,
does the memory information update in kind of real time, or is it?
So memory, yeah, that's a good question, Paul. Memory information does not update in real time. In fact, unless you specifically add an event listener, and we'll talk about where you can do that in a sec, none of these update in real time. It's just a single get this piece of information and do something with it. So the CPU information, memory information, and the list of hard drives that you have available on your computer are all just based on a single GET request. So you can see here I've got the 8 and that. So let's go back over to the code here for a sec. So then the third one we've got is update storage. So if we have a look at update storage, again, same thing. Notice it's systeminfo.storage.get, and again that callback that goes in and does the callback. So if we go and look at update storage info and have a quick peek at that, again, for the storage info, what I'm doing is basically creating a bunch of rows in my table. So I go and grab my table body, go through each of the drives that I've got, and add something for the drive ID, for the drive type, the drive capacity, and the drive available capacity. Now, one of the things you're going to want to do when you play with this, as you look around at some of these, is test this on a couple of different platforms. This is experimental right now, so you want to try it in a couple of different places. Once we get this out of experimental, I don't think you're going to need to do that. The reason why I say you need to check this is today, the storage info, if you request that on a Chrome OS or a Chromebook, it returns undefined there because the machine doesn't, while it has a hard drive and storage space, it doesn't really have the storage space in the same way that we think about storage space on a regular laptop or other device. And as we move into looking at how some of these apps run on mobile devices, whether that's a tablet, a phone, again, that's going to be something a little different. So you're going to need to handle a couple of different behaviors in here on some of these things. And so we just add, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I was going to say, just to note as well, the type can include removable as well, I think. So you can have removable storage. So if it's a USB drive, for instance, you can understand whether that's attached or not.
Yep.
I'm yet to actually see that working there, but that's not to say it doesn't, because I haven't plugged a USB drive in.
Yeah, so I tried that earlier today with a CF card and inserted and removed a CF card. And let me just bring up the sample again here. Notice how this, how here it says hard disk. When I inserted a CF card and refreshed, it said removable. But unfortunately, the API didn't come back and automatically say, hey, there's something new there. Now, that's kind of okay because right now, remember, this was just that single one-time get. If I did another get, it would show up. So there was no notification because I wasn't listening for anything at the time.
That's kind of interesting that for me because obviously we've got the media gallery API.
Yep.
And you might, right now we don't have like a device attached event, which I think would be really cool to have. I know we were talking about it a while ago.
Yep.
Especially with the web intents work. Yeah, it'd be nice to have like a device attached event, and in lieu of that, you could basically look through the types of devices that are attached. Removable, you can say, hey, look, you've attached removable storage.
Yep.
If you want to go and scan the pictures at least, and then you can hook that in with the media gallery API then.
Exactly.
Seems like a pretty nice way to work around that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't think it would be a terribly hard thing because I'll pop into this right now. If I pop back over to the code, if you have a look, I've got this system info CPU on updated add listener. So this says, hey, anytime the CPU is updated, add an event. There's a similar event for storage that you can say, hey, I want to listen for changes in my storage drive available size. Now, I don't have that one in here, though let me actually bring up a place where we do have it so that you can just see. This is, again, this is in the sample that is up in the GitHub repository for the team, and system info. You'll see here in a sec why this is a little bit frightening, but start monitor. So we do system info storage on available capacity changed, add listener. so that you can go in and say, hey, I want to be able to listen for changes to the available drive capacity changes.
When does that change? I mean, is that when you format a drive or something, or
that event fires any time that the available hard drive space changes. Now that could mean,
okay.
Maybe you saved a file to the disk.
Got you.
Maybe the system has written something in terms of like you've saved some other app saved to disk. Your paging files change size. So it's not the most useful thing right now because it's going to fire left, right, center, up, down, 3 ways till Sunday. As I was just writing some of my apps, I was this app earlier. I was like changing 7 times. So maybe not the most useful thing. But still good to have. So you can see here I've also added a system info on updated add listener for the CPU usage changed. And that's going to fire every time the usage on the CPU changes. So if I'm maybe using more CPU for processing or something like that. And that's why you get these values here are changing. So if I inspect this element, and we'll have a look at the console here. I don't have this firing off right now with each change, so let's go and add that in so that you can see what's happening. So update storage. So here we go. We've got the on CPU usage change. I'm just going to do a console.log info. And now, pop back over here. If we reload the app, notice we've got this log fire, so we get the average usage, and we get a usage per processor, and that's a list, an array of the amount of usage for each processor. And I'm just doing a little bit of math to go and display these things.
So we just a quick one. We've had a question on one of the Google Plus posts from Francois Beaufort.
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean? What does Chrome OS is not the same for storage info? Can you ask Pete to elaborate?
Yeah, so certainly. Earlier today when I tried this on Chrome OS, what I got back from let me just bring up the code here so I can show you. Where is it? So here in the update storage info method, where it's the callback, so this is where I'm handling the different storage devices. Instead of getting back an array list here or an array of the different devices, the different hard drives that are available to me, I got back undefined, which is Chrome is coming back and saying, hey, there are no hard drives in this computer. And rather than giving an array of length 0, it gave an undefined. And so right now, it's just not returning anything. I think that's a bug, and I think we should be returning an array of length 0 if there is no storage devices available to the application. That's what's going on. Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a bug, but at the same time, I think some of the concept behind Chrome OS as well is that you should never really know that there's a disk involved.
Exactly.
It doesn't make that much sense. I don't know what it would be like if you plug a USB device in, like a storage device.
Yep.
But it does. I mean, regardless, it seems like a bug. You would like Pete said, you'd expect it to return 0.
Yep.
0 length of array, for instance. So I think that's to clarify what Pete was talking about before.
Yeah. Exactly. If we can actually bring up the link to Moderator, so that if people have questions, they can post your questions there on Google Moderator. We'll start taking those questions here in 2 or 3 minutes. But the key thing to keep in mind here is this is a cool, easy way to get the information you need about what type of CPU is in the machine, how busy the computer is, how much memory is available, and how much storage space is available. I think for the most part, the storage space is going to be the most interesting and most useful to people because as a developer writing an application, I'm not sure I really need or really care what platform that I'm on or necessarily how much memory is available. I might want that information to report back for analytics or something like that, but it's not really going to change the way that I deal with a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
One way that I might use it is determining where I want to do some of my processing. If I'm writing an image editing app and I've got some pretty heavy processing that I'm going to do, I might push that up to the server to do if I've got a low-end machine. But that's going to depend on a couple of other things.
That's actually not a bad idea. It's kind of hard to work out whether you want to do things locally or not, and it's kind of interesting to see whether that's going to change with the processes, number of processes and everything. But for me, some of the areas that I'm kind of interested in is you might be able to see when a web worker, for instance, that you have gets pushed onto another thread, and you could see, that it's not on your main thread. But from an actual usage, kind of giving it to users, they might want to know how busy their CPU is. They're actually insanely popular tools on other platforms.
Yeah, that's true.
It's just to see how see how much processor usage is getting used. I'm always kind of a little wary because if you, by virtue of the fact that you're using the API, means that you're using kind of CPU.
Exactly. It's sort of that. Well, if you're going to measure it, you're going to affect the measurement of it. It's always that fun little piece.
Yeah.
I think there's.
I can see a lot of apps coming out like basic, nice HTML based side, like storage space size stuff. You've got the number of CPU processors you've got. Yep. There's a whole lot of stuff, right? We haven't even got CPU temperature in and a whole lot of other metrics. But
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's one of those experimental APIs where we want more feedback about what people want. I know Intel wanted this and to see some stuff, but do developers want it? And if you're a developer, what you want, make sure you leave it on crbug.com or leave us a message about exactly what type of information you want from the system.
Yeah, that's a good call. That's a very good call. So if we can come off the display and just go to the side-by-side, why don't we have a look at some of the questions and see if there are any questions in Moderator, so that if people do have any questions, we can take some of those. While I'm pulling that up, Paul, is there anything you want to add?
No, I think it's basically, this is still experimental. We've got the display API, which is kind of hidden and doesn't seem to be available, which again I think is either a bug or it's available in Chromium on Trunk at the moment. These are actually kind of interesting. It's like if you've got the displays, you want to know how many displays are on the screen, which window. Well, I'll rephrase it. The thing I would be kind of interested in is to be able to target which window goes onto what screen, because I don't believe we have that capability at the moment. But if you can understand the screens and the display depth and the DPI and all that type of stuff, you can start to you let the user have a little bit more advanced control over the layout of applications, and you can go full screen on one tab or one window, or choose to go full screen on a second window, and kind of give the user that ability to do that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Which is what I want to see. I don't think we're quite there just yet, but this is the whole point of these talks, is for us to tell everyone exactly what's coming down the line and kind of how to start to play with it, and also how to give good feedback as well.
Yep, cool. So I just pulled up the questions, and the link is there on. Hang on, it's always fun. It's somewhere, it's right down there. See, you can see it right there. So the questions are there. If you've got questions, feel free to post them. I want to take one question from a student at Davidson in North Carolina, and it's not completely related to the stuff that we're talking about with the system info APIs, but I think it is a somewhat interesting question that would definitely, you could use some of these with Chrome apps. And the student wanted to know, I'm working on an independent research project where I want to project a lot of data, weather, university and hospital locations, economic data, onto a map of the US. What's the best program to use, and what are some of the Google API features that would meet your needs? Well, I think from a Chrome apps perspective for something like this, we run into a couple of challenges with Chrome apps, because unfortunately right now we can't super easily embed maps, because the point of Chrome apps is they work offline, and maps need that online connection. You can use a web view, to go and represent and pull in those maps, but it won't work offline. That's probably the best way to do this if you wanted to do it as a Chrome app. To use a web view and use the Google Maps APIs. And I know that they have a regular show. I don't know when their show is on. I think their show may actually be on in about half an hour. So if you're still watching, check developers.google.com/live to see when the Maps show is. They can definitely talk a lot more about how to go and overlay data and that kind of stuff onto Maps and where to get some of this information. Paul, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of other APIs that we've got as well, and whilst we don't quite have access to what we know as the Google script loader, where you do goog.load and then the name of the script, primarily because we can't inject we can inject new tags, but the way that it does it, we can't have access to that at the moment.
Yep.
But it's actually not too hard to get access to the APIs, especially if you use the identity API, whether it's the first party or third party APIs.
That's true.
You can just make normal XML HTTP requests, which are authenticated against the OAuth token. And it's like 2 or 3 lines of JavaScript, and whilst we can make it a lot easier to do, and we still got to work on that side of things, you can still use that to access all the existing APIs, because pretty much all of our API suite is based off OAuth 2 authentication. So we have that built into Chrome applications, and if you want to go and get some extra sources of the data, whether it's like a reverse geomap, for instance, or reverse geocode, you can go and call those API REST endpoints quite easily.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was my answer.
Cool. All right. Well, it looks like that's the end of the questions for today. So I want to thank Paul for joining us from London. And thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you found this interesting. We'll be back again next week, same time, where we're going to dive into some more Chrome apps APIs. Definitely go have a look at developers.google.com/live to see what our show next week is, as well as check out our Plus page at Google Chrome Developers is our name. On there. I'll be posting a short summary of some of the stuff we talked about today. So with that, Paul, do you have anything you want to add?
I'm really excited about the next couple of weeks. I think this was the first, probably simplest API to kind of start to talk about. We've got notifications. I know there's been a lot of stuff.
Yeah, the notifications are really slick. And
notifications, push messaging.
That one's pretty awesome.
That's a good one. What else have we got? We've got loads actually coming up.
Yeah, we've got a whole bunch. In fact, you know what? I'll pull it up right now.
We've got a minute spare, right?
Yeah, we've got a minute. All right. So if I bring up developers.google.com/live, it's great. Some days at Google, where you'd think we have nice, fast internet connections, we don't always have the fastest of internet connections.
That's because you're using it to stream video, right?
Well, yeah, that's true. So next week we're going to be talking about rich notifications. So that's next week on the 26th. The week after, we're going to be talking about the synced file system. File system. Paul, why don't you talk about that? Because this is one you've been really excited about for a while.
Yeah, this is one of those ones that we kind of need on the web, at least, especially for offline applications, is the ability to use an API that is basically exactly the same as the HTML5 sandbox file system API, but basically have that to access Google Drive. It's not. I mean, I think ultimately we don't want to necessarily, if it's standardized, have it just on Google Drive only. But right now, it's like integrated experience with Chrome applications. You'll basically save a file to the HTML5 file system, and then via Google Drive, and still sandboxed, right? It's still sandboxed inside your applications area, not kind of completely available to everyone. Have that file then replicated out to all your other kind of instances of your application for that user. So if they're on the MacBook Pro and they save a file into their local files, like their local sandbox file system, and then they go on their Chromebook, well, it'll start to appear there, and it'll just be available and synchronized.
Yeah.
So that file system, it's very early on at the moment. It's still experimental.
Yep.
And there's a lot of things that we're trying to work out how we think developers want to use it. Right now, if there's a collision between kind of two different, the same file and two different updates on two machines, the developer has to delete one of those files, basically. And we want to get a little bit smarter about what to do and how to kind of help the developer resolve the conflicts in kind of the collisions inside files. But that's one API to check out, test, and obviously watch in a couple of weeks when we're gonna show it off.
Cool. And then the following week, we've got alarms, the week of March 11th. So we've got plenty of cool stuff coming up for you. So stay tuned, and we'll see you next week at the same time. Paul, thanks for joining, and thanks for watching, everybody.
Bye.